Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Hello, welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. This is Thursday, October 3rd. I'm Matt Roy, back in the saddle. This is Chuck McIntyre, keeping it warm for me while I was gone. What's up, Chuck?
Keeping it warm?
Keeping it warm.
In studio freeze? I don't think so,
I mean,
bro.
yeah, maybe a bad choice of words, but
yes.
hey.
The only thing we're missing is a couple of hooks on the wall, then we can really have a meat locker.
No, we're just going to put those down there.
Okay.
What's going on? How was Spurs Media Day and all that stuff? I was out in Kansas City seeing my in-laws.
Yeah, how'd that go?
It was good. You got a present on your desk. I brought you some Arthur Bryant's barbecue sauce.
Nice.
See? Yeah, you haven't even been in there
Look
yet.
at that. No, well done, Matt Roy, Employee of the Month.
I know. I can't have you guys getting mad at me for being gone. So I wanted to bring presents. I come bearing gifts. So
Busy week, obviously, right? Spurs start up, Astros get bounced, so at least there's one less thing on our plate.
Cowboys don't have any depth.
Cowboys have no depth.
We've got a lot going on.
Well, they have depth. It's just we don't know what it's going to look like until probably this week.
It's going to be tested. That's for sure.
Yes.
It's going to be tested. But yeah, like we said, got a lot going on. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone, subscribe to the YouTube channel, both Fox SA and News 4. And if you're listening to the podcast version, go ahead and like, review, give us a 5-star rating. Tell us what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, all that stuff that helps the metrics out a lot. Like we said, got a lot to get to today. Cowboys depth are going to be tested. DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, Brandon Cooks now going to be injured for this coming up week on Sunday Night Football. Plus, there's a certain receiver who wants out that might want in to Big D. So we'll see what's going on there with Davante Adams. Spurs going through practice this week. Wemby talking again today. So we'll talk about their season opener here coming up in a few weeks. Their first preseason game is on Monday. Isn't that crazy?
Totally insane.
I actually it really creeped up on me. Don told me that about 10 minutes ago, and I was like, what? What do you mean it's on Monday?
The season that never ends. NBA basketball.
Exactly.
It's like hockey now.
Hey,
it's always hockey season.
We love hockey. And then High School Hype Squad's back. Week 6 of the high school football season is here. We'll go through our TNL top 10, a little bit of a shakeup on that list. Plus, I'll go through the matchup tonight with Marshall and Harlan. But I have a Davante Adams themed trivia question for you. And since you are a Packer fan,
yes,
I figured you'd have a good chance at this one.
Love me some 17.
So, Davante Adams, since 2014, when he was drafted in the second round, has the second most touchdowns among all receivers with 96. Who's the only one with more? Who is first on this list?
Well, I would have thought he was one.
He is two. He is two, and I will give you a hint.
Okay.
The other receiver has one more.
That does me no good. That's all right. We'll have a couple of minutes to think about it.
Yeah, a couple minutes to think about this one. So once again, the question is, since 2014, Davante Adams has the second most touchdowns among receivers with 96. Who is the only receiver with more? Receiver, the key phrase there. No tight ends on this list. No running backs on this list. Receiver. All right, let's get to the Cowboys and the Steelers. So the Steelers are 2.5 point favorites, on Sunday Night Football coming up this Sunday. The over-under is 44.5, which is really high for Steelers because they don't actually score points except for against the Colts. That's going to be 7:15 over on NBC News 4. The Cowboys are banged up, man. Micah out this week. That was kind of the best and worst part about last Thursday is that they got the win against the Giants, which we all thought they would do because Dak does what Aaron Rodgers did to the Bears for so long. He's basically their owner. Sorry, John Mara. Dalvin Cook's still not playing in this game, but last week everyone got hurt, and now we're coming into this game and they're really banged up. So how does that kind of shape what's going to happen in Pittsburgh on Sunday night?
That's a really good question, right? You would think of all the guys that you can't afford to play without, it would be 90 and 11, and yet here they are. It would appear, at least this week, to not have either one of those guys. I don't really know how they're going to do this, Matt. I mean, honestly, does 35 play a lot more? Do 35 and 13 see a lot more of the field? Do they have to do it differently with their pass rush? Do they revamp how they want to attack on offense based on trying to limit the amount of time that the defense is on the field? I mean, there's so many things spinning through my head. I'm really curious more than anything to see the Cowboys and how they decide they're going to go about proceeding forward with these guys that are out, arguably their two best defenders. It's going to be a huge challenge going forward, no doubt.
Yeah, and I mean, we came into the season and we were expecting a lot from rookies, first and second year players. And now you lose your two guys that you're relying on. You might as well have just lost all of the veteran leadership on your defense, because now it's going to be Overshown. It's going to be Maris Leafau. It's going to be Marshawn Nealon. It's going to be Mozzie Smith. Basically, your entire front seven is first and second year players. So how are those guys going to react to a power run game in Najee Harris and a quarterback like Justin Fields, who just wants to pound, and really not take advantage of a disrupted secondary that the Cowboys have? That defense is, I think, in a world of hurt this weekend. And Mike Zimmer, it's going to fall squarely on Mike Zimmer's shoulders to create a game plan to take advantage of the guys that he has.
100%. But there are a lot of good minds in that coaching room, and I'm sure that Mike Zimmer's probably seen it all, having to play and be functional without your best guys. We certainly know that McCarthy's done a really good job with that over the years too. So I wouldn't be really, at this point, be willing to write them off that they won't find a way to pivot some way, somehow, and be functional. I'm less worried about the DB group as a unit. I think overall the depth at linebacker is pretty good. But how do you use those linebackers differently than maybe what they've been accustomed to doing at this point? It's 13 take the role of 11 at this point. I think maybe that's got to be the case, right? He's got to be the guy because he's clearly the fastest guy in that room in terms of linebacking speed.
We had major questions about the team's depth coming into the season. And because of all the guys they let go, because of none of the guys that they paid, we had major questions coming in about their depth, and now that depth is being tested early. And without Parsons, who is your best defensive player, without DeMarcus Lawrence, who is probably your third best defensive player, I'm just saying behind Trayvon Diggs, maybe. I don't know how they do this besides not being on the field. And if you don't want to be on the field with your defense, that means you have to have a running game, and the Cowboys can't run for a lick. So how are they going to win this game?
That's another interesting point that you're making too, because right from the 40,000 foot view, the phrase I always like to use, you would assume that would be the goal, right? Long drives, shorter game, work the clock, keep your defense off the field as much as possible, give them a break, make sure that they're really raring to go in the fourth quarter. I know that's the goal every week, but because I think what this is starting to look like through a month through the season is, you'd like to have two really good explosive weapons on offense, right? And in years past, it's for sure been 88, and it was for sure Pollard before he got hurt. And then it looked like at least he was starting to come back from that nasty leg injury that he had the year before. So right now, 88 hasn't been himself.
He was on Thursday.
He's a little slow. He's been a little slowed with the foot, right? Is it the foot that was bugging him? Something's been bugging
CD?
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but who's going to be the other guy? If CD is going to get all the attention most weeks, which he was anyway, you've got to have somebody step up and fill that void. And to this point, they've had some guys that can make plays, but are they home run hitters in the sense that you've got to put more attention on them, or game plan, or scheme for, every game, that it's going to be two guys that you got to stop. Now there really isn't that right now, which makes them easier to manage if you're the team playing defense.
And that falls on Jake Ferguson. That falls on Brandon Cooks. That falls on Jalen Tolbert. And to this point, Jake's been banged up. Brandon Cooks now banged up because of the infection in his knee, which is just kind of a freak injury in the first place. But Jalen Tolbert has been okay. Jalen Cooper been okay. Ryan Flournoy is going to make his debut this week. Maybe he'll give them a spark in the offense. But if you want a spark on your offense, you need a running game. And to this point, they haven't activated Dalvin Cook yet, which is a little peculiar, I think. You see guys that are signed to practice squads and then playing the next weekend. And I don't know whether it says more about Dalvin Cook or whether it says more about the coaching staff not believing in Dalvin Cook that much, that they haven't elevated him yet, or maybe they believe more in Deuce Vaughn and Rico. Rico is obviously the number one back now. I think that's unquestioned. Zeke his snap count has fallen precipitously since week 1. You need a running game to win this game. And if you can't run the ball it's going to fall squarely on Dak's shoulders. And I don't know how confident everyone is if everything is on Dak, because it seems like right now Dak's going to have to put on the Superman cape for the next 2 weeks.
I think so too. And they need a wild card out of all this, right? So who's the guy that's going to be the guy that out of everybody has the potential to really shock you and make some plays? Is it 9? Turpin? I mean, is he going to have to make some play, a big play, do something? I mean, he's the guy that's capable of providing a spark or being the quote unquote wild card. But yes, I mean, given how much he's still learning about playing the position at the big league level, I mean, again, it's a big ask.
We've just talked a lot about Terp, and I feel like every time, if they wanted to use him like that, they would have already.
No, I think you're right.
Like,
or if they felt like he was capable of handling that load, they would have done it already. But now they're being forced to, at least this week with Brandon Cooks being out.
Well, I feel like it's not just this week that they just need more explosion on offense. And to get that, you might want to trade for a disgruntled receiver.
I was hoping you would get to that topic.
Out in Oakland. Excuse me, not in Oakland, Las Vegas. I still do that.
It's okay. I still do Los Angeles Raiders to thank myself. So.
Oh, that really takes you back.
Yes.
The Davante Adams of it all is extremely interesting. Should the Cowboys trade for Davante Adams, who is 31 years old, but is still at the top of his game and is a top 10 receiver in this league, just putting it lightly.
Yes.
That's not questionable as if he's a top 10 receiver in this league. He would come along with $13.5 million against your cap. But every week you wait, that lowers about $900,000. They have $25 million in cap space, the Cowboys do, but a lot of that is earmarked for Micah Parsons in the coming years, which is why they haven't used some of it yet, allegedly. There's reporting out there that they were interested, but not at the asking price. Then there was reporting that the Cowboys like their receivers the way they are right now, and their receiver
room. Well, they have to say that.
They have to say that. Yeah. So should the Cowboys trade for Davante Adams?
Well, I mean, if we're just playing, tiddlywinks here and spitballing, and yes, absolutely, they should go do it, right? Who wouldn't want this guy on their team? Can you imagine Dak having 17 and 88 on the same team? I mean, I'm sure most people would salivate at this point. And to your earlier point about how slowly the running game has come along here, granted, it's only the first month of the season and there's a long way to go. But again, if you're looking, and I think in their mind, they know that they would need another explosive player. It's how do you measure where they're at, what they don't have right now, what the schedule looks like. You're sizing up everybody else around the league. How much do you go the rest of the way all in based on what you've seen so far, given what your injury situation is? Great point about 11 coming up with a contract, but could you do it differently? I know they've got a lot of dead money that they have to navigate through next year too, but maybe you could get Davante Adams to redo his deal. But I mean, I would do it. But again, we're playing fantasy football. These guys are playing with real money.
We're literally playing fantasy
It's just, football. I mean, I don't know if you're thinking long term, I definitely don't do it. But if you're thinking this year,
here's the thing,
and you're playing like this is, and certainly the way they've signed contracts and given those away, they seem like they're going for this year.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think it would take a lot of negotiating on their part to do something along the lines of what the Texans did with Stephon Diggs. When the Texans traded for Stephon Diggs, they ripped up his old deal, gave him a 1-year contract, and he's a free agent after this year. So they both are incentivized to play their best football. They're incentivized to use Stephon Diggs, and he's incentivized to be used in the correct way and help his team win so that after this year, he can get another bag. If Davante Adams would be willing to do something like that, maybe rip up his deal, re-sign for just this one, these 9 games, 10 games, 11 games, whatever it is that they have left when they trade for him, and then he's free to go wherever he wants after this, whether that's the Saints, whether that's the Jets, to go with Derek Carr in New Orleans, or to go with his old quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, in New York, then he's welcome to do that. I don't know the situation well enough to say that he's willing to do that. However, What I do know is that Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones treasure trade value and draft picks like gold, like platinum, whatever, insert metal here,
Right.
insert precious minerals here. They won't make this trade because of the draft capital that it would cost. It would probably cost them a second round pick and some money. Neither of those things they've shown any willingness to give up.
Well, I mean, that certainly plays into the equation. I don't know. It was just a weird day yesterday. While all this was going on, right? And the Davante Adams, Cowboys being one of the teams interested, that circulated before the Brandon Cooks injury came to light, right? And I think there must be more to the Brandon Cooks story in terms of, we found out yesterday that he had a similar procedure done on his knee during summertime, during camp, didn't disrupt him from missing practice or any of that. Had a similar procedure done after the Giants game, and then he got infected. So, as much as we all like Brandon Cooks, he's obviously dealing with a knee issue, right? That something that has required some sort of procedure done now twice, and now it's infected. So, do they believe in Tolbert? I'm sure they do. Do they think that 9's coming along nicely? Yeah, and I think they're getting a lot of bang from their buck when it comes to 9. But I just found it really weird that Jerry Jones swooped into practice yesterday in a helicopter.
Why is that weird?
During practice.
It's not weird.
Because that doesn't happen. Like, he knows how valuable practice time is. And I just, do you think he was doing it just to be, show a force or show everybody how
I thought it was definitely
big
strange.
he is? For lack of a better term, it was definitely strange. But then I thought even more odd, he goes over and he starts talking with McCarthy. So is something going on behind the scenes right now that requires Jerry, wherever he is, flying in on a helicopter, landing on the field adjacent to where the team is practicing, and then in the middle of the early part of practice, Jerry's talking to his head coach? I don't know. And maybe nothing happens, but it sure makes me feel that maybe something is up. Whether it's about Davante Adams or something else.
I think the Cowboys fans need to accept the fact that this is the team they have. That the Cowboys are not going to make a big move this year because this is the reset year. This is it. You're going to have Micah. After this year, they're probably going to re-sign Micah. You just signed CD. You just signed Dak. You're not going to trade for anybody big because in Jerry Jones's mind, he's now done enough. All in didn't mean all in on this year. It meant all in on the young guys. And we've talked about that ad nauseum here. It means all in on Mozzie Smith. It means all in on Marshawn Nealon and Maris Leafau and DeMarvion Overshone and Rico Dowdle and Jalen Tolbert and all these young guys who are unproven and need to prove their worth. All in on the future draft picks that they have here. They're not going to trade draft picks right now for Davante Adams to try and win this year because they need those draft picks next year and the year after because they don't have any money left because it's all going into Dak Prescott's pocket.
All I'm doing is spitballing out loud, playing fantasy football here, something I would love to see.
I would love to see
it. Would be
Davante
a great
here.
midseason
100%.
boost, juice, you name it.
That'd
And
be
I got to
awesome.
believe, too, that if 17 is said, essentially, and probably in not these words, that he wants out of Vegas, then I'm sure he's probably willing to restructure his deal at this point.
I would,
because now he has zero leverage.
All
What's
right.
he going to do? Go back?
Well, they would automatically become the best duo of receivers in the league. CD and Davante Adams, one on each side, would automatically become the best receiving duo in the league.
Then we could argue who's the number one on the team, 88 or 17.
I don't think there's any argument there. It's 88, but that's just me at this point in their careers.
Woo!
Let's get to the answer to our trivia question before we get to some Spurs stuff. So, since 2014, Davante Adams has the second most touchdowns among receivers with 96. Who is the only receiver with more?
I honestly don't have no clue who it could be, but the only guy that I think, and he's probably only top 5, because I see yards and a lot of catches, but I don't. God, do I see that many touchdowns as 13 in Tampa?
13 in Tampa. You're going Mike Evans?
It's because the only thing that comes to my mind. But I don't think I'm right.
You don't think you're right? You got to have more confidence here, Chuck.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding. Mike Evans, 97 touchdowns.
Why do I think more yards and just catches?
Because
than
he's
I do
gotten
touchdowns?
1,000 yards every season he's been in the league.
But you would think we'd be making in my own mind, be making a bigger deal about how many that he's that guy.
He scored 97 touchdowns. I think he has about 900 more yards.
Come on, Jerry, trade for 13.
Maybe if they were losing, that would be good. But yeah,
nice
job.
Aggie guy.
Well done, Chuck.
Nice.
There you go.
All right.
Starting off or ending the week strong here.
I'd say I'd go get an ice bag to get on my elbow here from all the padding on my back that I'm going to need over here, but we don't obviously need it in the current environment.
Yeah, this ice box.
Yes.
You're chilled enough.
Yes.
All right, let's get some Spurs stuff. So I want to, you guys, you and Zach, and thank you to Zach Hedrick for filling in for me, obviously, on Monday. You see more of him next Thursday when I'm gone again. You guys obviously talked a lot about Spurs Media Day on Monday, so I don't want to talk about it ad nauseum here, but I do want to talk a little bit about it because there's been a lot of winning talk with the Spurs on Media Day and on Wednesday, and they're probably going to talk more about winning today. Last year at this time, we heard from Pop, it was the rebuild. It was the slow rebuild, and now it's about winning. Then they came out and they started out 3-21. This year, it seems like they're doing the same thing. They're talking a lot about winning. This year, it's about getting better, but it's also about putting wins on the board. It's about improving, but it's also about, helping out that left-hand column. Do you believe it more now? Are you confident more in the Spurs trying to win this year than you were at this time last year?
Wow, that's a tough question. I hadn't thought about it in those terms. No, because I was pretty confident. I thought they would be better winning more games, and then it turns out they won the same amount of games. So I would guess yes, because I don't think Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes came here to lose, right? I mean, yeah, you could maybe say that, okay, Chris Paul is just grabbing bags at this point in his career, but there's something about those guys and where they've been that I can't see them in locker rooms or being in a locker room where they're going to be very quiet if there's a 3-20 start, right? Or something gross or stupid, or, they're going to be very boisterous and they're going to do everything they can, not only as ball players, but as leaders and guys who've done very well in this league to make sure that they win more games. So I guess, yes, having spitballed this out over a microphone, yeah, I do feel a little more confident that they're gonna win more games this year than I did this year.
I think I am as well, and that's because of Victor for one. He's listed 235 now. I don't think I quite believe that he's 235. I think they're embellishing a little bit. He might be around 225, but you never know on that long frame of his. He said that he was asked about awards. I think you guys played the SOT on Monday. He was asked about winning awards and what that means to him. And he's like, well, I'm about winning. And with winning comes those things. And so to him, and Victor has said that from the very beginning, it's about W's. And with that comes, the defensive players of the year and the most improved players of the year, the MVPs, the all pros, the all NBA teams, all that stuff. I think that this year is going to go as Victor goes, but it's also going to go as the continuity goes with Chris in tow. Obviously, Coach Pop was playing coy with how much Victor and Chris have played together so far, but I think I'm more confident in saying that they're going to win more games this year than I was last year, just because you can't really win less. I mean, Victor's not.
That's fair.
Victor's not getting worse.
Yes.
This team is unquestionably better than they were last year. I think Chris, obviously going into year 19 or year 20 in the league, is not the player he was, but he's exactly what this team needs. I think Harrison, going into his 13th year in the league, is going to be exactly what this team needs. You now have people on this team who know how to win, who have won at a high level, who have won a championship in the case of Harrison Barnes. Obviously, Chris hasn't. Last year at this time, you had your biggest veteran, your most tenured veteran was Doug McDermott. And I love Doug, but that doesn't mean that he is, the end all be all when it comes to winning. He hasn't won anything in this league. He is a journeyman 3-point shooter who is a good dude and helps the team as a role player off the bench. He's not Chris Paul. He's not Harrison Barnes. Stephon Castle's development is going to be key with this team as well. But when you look at it, and if you're simply just asking the question, is this winning talk BS or is it not BS? Because I think we all agree that last year's was obviously BS. I don't think it is this year. I think them getting to 40 wins, them getting to 41 wins, them taking that step, learning how to get victories with Keldon and with Jeremy and with Devin, all they've done is lose in their careers so far. Can they win games? I think that they want to see that happen.
I'm with you 100%. The thing for media day that I thought was really surprising was Pop saying that where he felt Victor benefited the most from playing at the Olympics was that FIBA is more physical than the NBA. And I thought, man, I cannot believe he said that out loud.
Why? It's true. We said that all summer.
No, I know that. But for somebody on the inside, I mean, that didn't sound like it came from a place of warmth. And I mean, yes, we've all talked about this, but I mean, again, it's why, do we want to see, like, if you can say that, I mean, man, this is just not the world that I grew up in, dude. I mean, we used to laugh at FIBA basketball. I mean, our boys would go over there and kick their ass and just dominate them whenever we had international play, and we would be physical and they would back down from the physicality. And so to see that this is flipped in my lifetime, I think it's a pretty sad indictment in terms of where the NBA is as a whole. And I think, at least from my own personal experience of, watching what goes on in these games, some nights, again, I just was surprised that came out of a head coach's mouth, and especially with one that's got as many skins on the wall as that guy does.
One other quick thing for you. Pop was criticized a lot last year for sitting back and watching, kind of letting the young guys figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we're going to see a different kind of Pop this year? Or do you think it's going to be similar because he has the people like Chris and Harrison on the court now to kind of be those coaches on the floor? Do you think we're going to see the same kind of laid back Pop? Or are we going to see the, get in your ass kind of Pop?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
we've seen both.
Well, no, of
obviously.
course. I mean, that's all we saw forever. And I don't know that some of that stuff wasn't going on last year. I mean, they don't let anybody into practice to let you see what's actually going on. But I think it's a little easier probably now for Pop to go kick some ass if there's a guy like Chris Paul who's also kicking the ass. Or, I don't know if Harrison Barnes is necessarily going to be the guy that's, lighting fuels under guys' seats. But I don't know. That's going to be a fascinating dynamic because at some point you have to, at least I think, you will want somebody stern, and not everybody's motivated by that, but most guys are.
Right.
If there's the fear factor or, the threat of maybe losing your job or being traded, or that tends to usually motivate guys in a certain direction. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Like, again, I don't know that wasn't necessarily going on last year, but man, we know how Chris Paul has made a career out of getting under the skin of other people, but he's been a winner everywhere he's gone. So I don't know. I just think it's a lot easier if you've got a player that's, willing to talk the talk and walk the walk at the same time. And he's probably that guy.
We're going to be talking a lot more about the Spurs in the coming weeks. Obviously, the season kicks off in 3 weeks from today. 3 weeks from today. The preseason kicks off on Monday. We'll talk more about that on Monday as well. So if you want more, just make sure to subscribe to the News 4, Fox 29 YouTube channels and to wherever you get your podcasts if you want the audio version. Let's get some high school football. High School Hype Squad coming up. Week 6 of the high school football season. We'll go over our TNL top 10 and we'll go over our matchup of the week, which is Harlan versus Marshall, coming up tonight in Ferris Stadium. Obviously, I have my Taco Cabana Thursday Night Lights shirt on. I want to start with Piper. I was going to put what surprised you the most, but the game Piper played on Friday night against Smithson Valley was one of the best high school football games I've seen in my entire life. Piper now 5-0. They won the game against Smithson Valley 39-36. Absolutely insane game. Piper was up, I believe it was 32-29, and they had the ball with 3 minutes left. They basically had to run out the clock, but they were on their own 5-yard line. Fumble. Smithson Valley recovers it on Piper's 5. They go into score. They take the lead 32-36. seemed like a blink of an eye later, Piper scoring a touchdown. They win the game 39-36. Smithson Valley, an incredibly emotional loss for them because most of the kids that play at Piper right now used to go to Smithson Valley. So I just not enough can be said about how good of a job Nick Rogers is doing. They're now the 8th ranked 5A D1 team in the state after a win over Smithson Valley. So they're going into a bye week. They play Seguin next Friday, October 11th. Just not enough can be said about how good of a job Nick Rogers and Caden Keith and Isaiah Champagne and all those guys are doing up there.
100% rubber stamp what you just said. I couldn't have said it any better. I mean,
They're
saw
phenomenal.
it, you were there. So
yeah, they're phenomenal, man. I want to talk about Alamo Heights a little bit. They defeated they defeated Bernie last week. They beat, I think the game was 35-28 against Bernie. They were tied at 21 at halftime. That was probably their toughest game of the season. That was now their 29th straight district win for them, which is really saying something for Alamo Heights because their old district, no disrespect to all the teams in that SAISD league, but Alamo Heights was the cream of the crop in that league. And now that they're now in a new 5A league, they're beating teams like Bernie. It shows you how good this team really is.
No doubt, because Bernie's really, really good, really, really
Shea
talented.
Hendricks does a great job with them there.
100%. So, maybe, again, I'm sure I'm like you. I mean, this whole 5A, these teams that are in 5A really give you goosebumps about what might be at the very, very, very end of the year.
Yeah, and Alamo Heights is now the 3rd ranked team in the state according to Dave Campbell's 5A D2 rankings. Like, this team is not just good, San Antonio good, but they're Texas good. Like, this team has the ability to win state, and I feel like we can't understate that enough.
Right.
They are now going into Harlandale this week. I believe they're at Harlandale 7 p.m. on Friday. They have not lost to Harlandale since 1980. 1980 is the last time they lost to Harlandale. So I don't think I think they'll continue that streak and probably win tomorrow night. Steele is our number 3 team in the TNL top 10. They're 4-1, 1-0 in district. They defeated Clemens 55-12. The Knights rebounded from their Austin Westlake loss. Obviously, they scored 50 plus points for the 3rd time this season. Don't really have to talk about that one too much. I think we're expecting Steele to dominate the rest of the season. Westlake was obviously their toughest game. They do East Central, though, this week, no pushover. They beat Bernie 52-49 2 weeks ago. They just beat Judson last week in a hell of a game. I think they went down 20. Judson scored a late touchdown with like 2 minutes left, took the lead 23-22, tried to go for 2-point conversion, missed it. And then East Central comes back, gets their own touchdown, gets their own 2-point conversion, ends up winning by 7. So East Central, no pushover in this one. We're going to kind of speed through these a little bit because a lot of teams are either coming off a bye or they don't have a game this week. So Southwest, they had no game coming off a bye. They're going to play their toughest game of the year tomorrow against Southside in Dragon Stadium, 7:30. It's actually the first game in their new press box. So
all right,
hopefully we'll send someone down there to check out the new digs. Brennan, the hottest team in Texas, probably. They coming off their bye week, they are now in the Dave Campbell 6A rankings at number 24, which they deserve because they have a couple of huge wins over Harlan and Smithson Valley the last couple of weeks. Tonight they play O'Connor at Gus, 7:30 game. John Jay, I want to talk a little bit about John Jay. They are now 5-0, 3-0 in district. They beat Eagle Pass win 18-0. When the redistricting kind of came out for all the teams, you took note of John Jay because they have a lot of travel. They're going to be going to Eagle Pass, to Laredo for a lot of their 5A games, which good for them that they went down from 6A to 5A, but whole lot of travel for a high school team. They're now 5-0, 3-0 in district. Looks like they're going to start running away with this stuff. So what does that say about Gary Gutierrez and that squad to get his team ready and travel all that much?
And you think about what they lost last year, right? His own son included playing
over at Navy. Good for him.
But they're doing it differently, right? This like D'ing up, like you're shutting out guys. I don't care who it is. I mean, Eagle Pass, they're used to playing, or Eagle Pass win. I mean, those Eagle Pass schools are used to playing San Antonio schools. I mean, to be shutting down teams like that, and then they had a close, low-scoring game the week before, too, if I'm not
9-3,
mistaken.
I believe.
So, I mean, hats off to the John Jay defense, bowing up.
I believe they've only allowed 155 combined yards in the last 2 weeks.
No kidding.
Yeah, I believe I read that this morning.
Sounds like a story.
I mean, maybe we got to get out there.
Right.
They're on a bye this week. They play Laredo Figueroa October 10th at Gus next week. New Braunfels, close game against Victoria East, 23-21. They're now 4-1, 2-0 in district. They have a bye week this week. They scored all 23 of their points in the second quarter, ended up holding on for a win against Victoria East. Their next game is against Bernie Champion, 7 p.m. I believe it's tomorrow. Taft is number 8 in our TNL top 10. We're going to get into Taft a little bit right now because, oh my God, what a TNL game we had last week. They're 4-1 now, 3-0 in district. They're coming into a bye week, but they were down to Stevens. They ended up beating them last week on TNL 28-27. And got to be honest, going into the game, I thought Taft was going to roll them. They end up down in the third quarter, 27-7 to Stevens, who runs the flex bone over there. And Coach Boykin does a great job with it.
Yep.
I was floored that the score was what it was, 27-7, and then Taft starts finally getting their legs in the fourth quarter. They end up scoring in late in the fourth and winning the game 28-27. It was insane. And Ricky, you could tell how happy Ricky was after the game.
I'm surprised he didn't try to body check you. And
I thought he was going
to.
Yeah. No, I mean, just talk a little bit about that game, Chuck. It was phenomenal.
No, it really was. I think what resonates with me after a game like that is, when we heard Coach Stade talking about the return to culture, we had some guys that grew up in the program, so they knew what was expected. And then Coach Stade felt like, he said, I felt like maybe it was a little stagnant and maybe a little laxed. We got a bunch of kids that weren't here when we first started. So they went back to their roots, reaffirmed with the coaching staff, this is what we want. And you feel like when you win a game like that maybe some of those lessons or some of the plans that they had in place to try to build culture maybe reared its head in a time like that. I mean, you never know. Maybe that's an absolutely horrible stretch, or maybe it was just, damn fine football team coming back and winning a ball game after it didn't put its best foot forward. But no matter what happens, those are the moments that you see, a lot of things come out and didn't see it coming. I can tell you when it was 27-7, that's 100%, for sure.
100%. East Central comes in at number 9, 4-1, 1-0 in district. They just defeated Judson 30-23. Talked about how entertaining that game was. The Hornets off to a good start in their quest for their second winning season in the last 10 years. So hopefully they can do that. I think I speak for everyone when I think they'll be 4-2 when we have this talk to this point next week, because they play Steele tomorrow. They play Steele tomorrow, 7:30 at Lenhoff.
I'm curious to see what they do, right? Because I full disclosure, I haven't seen him play at all this year, but I know Coach Hubbard does a great job there. So I'm curious to see what they do against Steele. I know they'll be ready for that fight. So let's go. Bring it on.
Smithson Valley coming in at number 10, 3-2 this season. Those 2 losses are by 3 points to Piper and by, I believe, 11 points to Brennan, who's a 6A team. So I don't hold those 2 losses against them. Those are 2 of the best teams in the state. Excuse me. So 3-2, 0-1 in district. Next game, they have a bye week this week to kind of lick their wounds after that emotional loss. Next game is against Wagner next Friday at Ranger Stadium. Let's talk about our TNL matchup of the week real quick before we get out of here. Harlan, 3-1. They scored 57 points last week in their win against O'Connor. It was a close game. I went to that one to shoot for us, and it was close at first. Guys going back and forth. O'Connor actually had a 17-10 lead, and then Harlan just took over in the second half. Whole lot of really good players left because of graduation. Elijah Walton, who was our defensive player of the year last year on the News 4 side. Noah Ferris, obviously their all-everything quarterback, left because of graduation. What does that make this team now as a Harlan Eddie Salas coach team?
So they got a lot of dudes still. So they're going to be okay in the athlete department. But I think what makes this matchup tonight fascinating to me is that Marshall's strength is running the football. Harlan's weakness to this point has been stopping the run. And they're trying some different things. They've got a different scheme. They've got some new coaches. So, again, it's a long season and kids are trying to grow up in the system. But Eddie Salas made it a point to say this week, it's like, look, we're at the point in the season where no more excuses for we're learning. It's a new scheme. We've got new coaches. They feel like they've got the talent to be able to execute better in some of their weaknesses. And as we know, Eddie's teams get better week by week. A lot of these teams do. I'm not just singling him out for that but he's a damn good coach and he's going to get these guys ready to play. Having said that, Marshall, they had Taft on the ropes. They had 4 turnovers in that game, still had them on the ropes. This is a team that if they protect the ball, they can dictate how you play football if they can control the football and make sure, more importantly, if they can protect the football. So I'm super curious to see how it plays out because, like you, Matt, I thought last week was going to look a certain way, and next thing you know, nope. Because you know what, Stevens is well coached. They got some dudes too, and they're young in certain areas, and they're all growing up. So how big of a leap is Marshall going to make this week? Harlan on a short week. A lot of moving parts here, but that's why we tee it up, right? I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, Tim Williams is a great coach too.
Yep.
We didn't get a chance to talk to Tim Williams this week. We talked to Coach Salas, who we'll hear from in just one second. But Marshall and Harlan always kind of circled on your schedule. You like to see how these teams match up, and Marshall kind of gives you those Stevens kind of vibes where they do a lot of different things to where they can stay competitive with bigger schools like Harlan and all those guys. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup tonight. I think you laid that out really well. It's kind of strength versus weakness on both sides of the ball for these guys, but Harlan can score a lot of points.
They got some dudes.
They're gonna stress out Marshall's defense, especially Peyton Matthews. Yep. Peyton Matthews is phenomenal. He's a great multi-sport athlete over at Harlan, and I'm going to be really entertained just watching him from the sidelines.
I'm disappointed. I heard this week from Coach Salas that Peyton Matthews, he didn't nominate him for our high school all-star game.
Boo.
The reason why? As soon as he gets his GED, he's off to Rice.
Yep.
So he won't be available because he'll be playing college football. I mean,
I guess that's
sad for us. Obviously, great kid. And,
we got to vote. We got to vote on that on Monday.
If you're going to Rice to play football, man, you're elite in more than just athletics. Let me tell you.
All right, let's hear from Coach Salas, and then we'll get out of here.
Team looks like they're doing really well this season. You got the one blemish, but it was like, how has Coach been able to assess what you guys have been able to do so far?
I'll tell you what, it's been a great growth year for us. We have a pretty experienced offense minus the top spot at quarterback, right? And so it's been a lot of fun being able to coach that position, making sure that position is growing exponentially, and it has been, and so we're excited for his growth. We did have another quarterback get injured early, and we're excited to get him back in a couple of weeks, and so, from the offensive perspective, I think we're heading the right direction. On the defensive side, new coordinator, new scheme, new kids. We have 3 returners only coming back, but I'm going to tell you, it's been a lot of fun coaching that group because, they're hungry to learn. They accepted the change. And they're fighting through it. And I'm going to tell you, every week it's showing how good they can be.
You said something that's very interesting. I've heard this said from Coach Pop a handful of times. He really enjoys the teaching of the young guys on how to play professional NBA basketball. You seem to enjoy that same thing. What is it about taking these young kids and molding them into the great athletes that you guys are working on? What makes that so special for you coaches?
I think as coaches, once you have a couple of kids for 2 years or so, man, it's kind of routine for them, and they kind of get it, and you're giving them little nuggets here and there. But when you take a player who's young, has no bad habits, right? And he's capable, but doesn't know anything on scheme, position, anything, to see him grow exponentially every day, you watch him on film, that's what coaching is about. That's why I love and enjoy doing it. I don't want to have a team that's obviously not experienced at all, but it's really nice to see that. And then with the older guys, as they're getting older, you get to teach, leadership. There's more in leadership there, but the younger ones, you're teaching skills to get through these games and be successful. And so I love it, enjoy it. I could go home every day and go, man, I made a difference.
What's keeping you up when you're watching this film on this Marshall team that they're going to present some challenges for you guys?
We haven't played Marshall in many years, and I know Coach Williams does an amazing job at outflanking players, teams and movement and so forth. And so it's a challenge. Marshall has always had tough kids that play hard, run hard, tackle. I mean, they do all the things they need to do right. And for us, it's a challenge. We still have a young defense, and we want our kids to match that intensity, and so For me, the challenge is where are we at now? You know, we always feel like instead of looking at just our opponent, we look at ourselves and go, where are we at? Where do we stand? Did we get better from a week ago? Did we get better from yesterday? And I think if we keep going in that direction, good things will continue to happen for us.
Always good to hear from Coach Salas, and I can't wait to tee it up in here in just, about 8 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I'm always looking forward to this too, man. Ferris Stadium, backyard brawl. Let's go.
All right, that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We will see you right back here for some more Spurs and hopefully Cowboys victory Monday coverage on Monday. We'll see you then.